Hi, welcome to Mike Ferry's podcast. It's called The Original, The One, and there's a reason for that. 51 years ago, Mike Ferry started the Mike Ferry organization, the first of its kind really in our industry. It developed into training and coaching, making Mike the original. There have been so many other companies that have come along, and quite honestly, Mike Ferry has literally spawned an entire industry of coaching. And today, what we're going to do on this episode of The Original is interview Mike Ferry himself. So let's start with welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're taking the time to talk with me, and I know that some of these questions I've asked you before, and I appreciate you sharing them with all of our listeners and really why and how the Mike Ferry organization got started. You started 51 years ago.
Yes.
Tell us how you got started.
Well, I was working for Earl Nightingale in Chicago. I worked for him for 4 years, from age 26 to age 30. I started the company at age 30. I'm 80 today, so that 50 years has gone by very quickly. And somebody asked me recently, Sabrina, if you could do it over, would you do it differently? I wouldn't do it differently. I just wish I had more time. Because, time is limited, and my time is getting less and less as I age. So I was working for Earl, and I was out on the road doing seminars for the company, and I would do like 2 or 3 a month. And Earl said to me one day, "You ought to just do this professionally." And I looked at him and I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I get paid a lot of money to go do a seminar or a talk." I said, "I know. I introduce you quite often, and I know how much you get paid." He said, "I'm not saying that you could get paid the same, but if you develop, you could be paid the same." So I gave that a lot of thought, and I waited about 6 months, and I decided that I would start my own company, and it revolved around having some seminars to do, because I was not a great believer in having, a one pony show. I wanted to be able to do work for a company or have individuals attend a seminar and have it being one of many with me they could attend. Because I think education is nonstop, ongoing. It never ends. And when your education ends, usually your production starts to slide or stops completely. So I started by doing a 1 3-hour seminar. It was on sellers, working with sellers, and then I wrote one for working with buyers, and then I would call people and give them a choice. I said, "If you were to bring me in to speak at your company, would you want me to speak on buyers or sellers?" Well, 98% of the time they said sellers. I said, "So you want me to talk about getting listings?" They said, "If you can." I said, "I can." I said, "Do you want me to talk about time management regarding listings, how to find a listing prospecting-wise, pre-qualifying a listing, or making a listing presentation?" So that was 4 more talks that I developed.
Oh.
And so they would say, pre-qualifying. Well, that was easy because I had pre-qualifying questions I used as an agent back in 1970. So that was just the beginning. And but people ask all the time, how did it transform into coaching? And the coaching really was started in 1988. It was October. I can't remember where I was. I thought I was in Florida, but it could have been any place. Because in those days I was speaking all day, going to the airport, getting on a plane, flying 2 or 3 hours, getting back to getting some bed rest, then speaking the next day. And I did that 5 days a week. It was exhausting. But I was young, and I didn't have a lot of options as what to do to make money. But the coaching started because somebody said to me, "What can we do to get this material into our brains faster?" And I remember saying to the audience, it's time for lunch. When we come back from lunch, I'll explain how we can make that happen. So after lunch, during lunch, I wrote out a script, and I called it one-on-one coaching. And I presented it. We had about 300 out of 400 people give me their cards saying they had an interest. And I think within about 3 weeks, Sabrina, I had signed up like 75 of them.
Wow.
To a 1-year agreement. I was charging $5,000, talked to them once a week, and it went from there.
Wow. So, like, what was it that made them come to you and say, how do we learn this faster? Was it, obviously you had great material and it rang true, and I believe that your material is the way for any real estate professional to advance their career. And you were selling before you started the company.
Yes. Yeah, I was a real estate agent. I purchased the company that I was working for, and realized very quickly that was not what I wanted to do. So that made me speed up getting the material written. But what happened is people realized that when I was speaking, that I had an abundance of scripts and dialogues that I used as an agent that I was trying to teach them. Right. So that's what triggered, how do you help us find or get this material into our heads and make it more usable?
So what were the challenges that you faced as you started building the company?
Well, this was before cell phones, before emails, before texting. You were sitting there with a rotary phone dialing people. And for the younger people out there, a rotary phone was a little black thing. You picked up the headset, held it on your chest and your shoulder, and you dialed people. Brrr, 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 and that's what you did, and you had to do it all day long every day to get business. So the biggest challenge was getting the phone numbers of all the brokers. So I started in Orange County, California, and I worked then from there into Riverside, San Bernardino, and then I worked into LA, Ventura, and then I went south into San Diego. Then I went east about one state into Arizona. Then I went north of Arizona into Nevada, and I just decided that I would cover the entire country with people, and I had a script that I used, which it amazes me that people bought into it so quickly, but I was giving them some good, strong benefits on why they should hire a professional speaker to come in and train their people.
Well, and there really wasn't a lot of training at that time, was there?
No, the primary trainer was a very, very strong guy out of Simi Valley named Tommy Hopkins, and he was kind of the leader of the pack. And I had known Tommy a long time because of Earl Nightingale's company. And I think really beyond Tommy, there was probably some fragmented programs around the country. But I looked at the United States and Canada as being one big contact. So I was making any place from 25 to 50 dial the number, ring the phone calls a day. And I did that for the first 2 years. I was doing 25 to 50 calls. Some days I was doing 75.
Wow. I've talked with you before about this, and even back then, and we've heard this forever, people still always say, but Mike, nobody answers the phone. But that was the same back then.
Nothing has changed, except that you could dial more numbers faster with the technology we have today.
Yeah, that's true. But the objection is still the same, and that has been the case all along. And, why did you originally start the Mike Ferry organization?
Well, I started it because I wanted to have a job, and I had 3 or 4 jobs, and I got fired every time I had a job, and I wanted to have a job where I couldn't get fired.
Okay.
And that is really what I was trying to accomplish. I would rather get fired by the clients not hiring me than get fired by somebody that's writing me a paycheck and didn't like the fact that we didn't agree on how things should be done. Because, Earl Nightingale said, if you're going to do this kind of work, have an opinion, be strong on your opinion, don't be afraid to give people your opinion, and then you'll be fine.
Well, and you have always said that the amount of money you get paid is in direct proportion to the service that you offer.
Correct.
So obviously, a lot of this was in seeing a need that existed when you started in the real estate industry.
Well, I had a great broker, Pat McVeigh, who was a good friend and a great broker. But Pat, like most brokers at that time, he had like 35 people in the office, and about 3 or 4 of us sold 90% of the homes. And, Pat catered to the other 27 that really did not do anything of consequence, if anything at all. So, I could see the need. I was saying to Pat, I wrote this script on contacting for sale by owners, or I wrote this script for contacting expired listings, or I wrote this script that has pre-qualifying questions, so I'm not wasting my time. Would you like to have it for the rest of the people? Nah, I don't want to push that stuff on them, and they might get mad and quit. So finally I said, well, I'm going to do it. They might get mad and quit. I got mad and quit. And I remember that first few weeks was kind of scary because most people would book a sales meeting once a week, and they'd invite somebody to come in and speak at their sales meeting. So, the script I used was very simple. I would call a broker. They would answer the phone. My name is Mike Ferry, professional speaker. Have you been to one of my seminars? And they would go, no. Of course, I didn't tell them I hadn't done any, which I hadn't done any at all. And then I would always say, oh, I'm surprised. How often do you bring speakers into your sales meetings? Well, I try to do it like once a month. Well, if I was to come in, would you want me to do it with buyers in mind or sellers in mind? In terms of the content, well, we would want to take more listings. I would say, okay, if we're going to take sellers in mind, do you want it on time management? Do you want it on prospecting? Do you want it on the presentation itself, the script? Well, I think we need something on prospecting. Good. I charge a fee of $300, which is what my total fee was when I started per day. I charge a fee of $300. Would you divide that up among your agents, or would you pay it, or would you split it with them? How would you handle the payment? And then they would usually say, who is this? Because they were so caught off guard by it.
By a sales process.
By a sales process.
So, it's 51 years later. How has the industry changed, in your opinion?
Very little. And I mean that very little. Now, technology has sped things up. People ask me all the time, do you endorse technology? Well, if you had a technology program that you could use for 3, 6, 9, 12 months, I would probably endorse it. But there's new technology almost every day.
Yeah.
And the truth is, people use technology to avoid having to talk to people.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Say that one again.
Well, people use technology to avoid talking to people. And I was a strong advocate of talking to people every day. I prospected every day as an agent, so I prospected every day as a speaker. So, the evolutions of technology and speed and efficiency is there.
Yeah.
But most people don't use it because they're too busy trying to avoid conversations with people. And if they would just get over that one little bump in the road, they could be more successful. Watch, we still have to take listings. We still need inventory. We still need to price them right. Interest rates are going to come and go up, go down, go change, daily, weekly, monthly, annually. We had a period where the interest rates were down at 2.5%, 3% recently. Yeah. And then they got all the way to 5%. Oh, my God, we can never sell a home again. It's 5%. I was closing deals, and we talked to a mutual friend in Austin a couple days ago. We agreed that we both were closing deals at 18 to 18.5% on a 30-year fixed loan. So really nothing dramatic has changed except people don't know how to sell.
Wow.
And the reason they don't is that they're either not being given a script to use, or what's worse, their average price has continued to climb. So their commission checks went from this size to this size.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to do anything differently to make that happen.
What was an average commission check for you when you were a salesperson?
$275.
All at once or down?
Well, the average sales price was $26,000 to $28,000, and you got a nice house in Fountain Valley, the outskirts of Garden Grove, in Huntington Beach, Fountain Valley. I mentioned that. You got a nice house. You got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,300 to 1,500 square feet, 6,000 square foot lot, block wall fence, nice neighborhoods, and it was $26,000.
Anybody out there wish they had a time machine and could go back and buy 25 houses in that area, Huntington Beach, for $25,000 a piece?
And
wow!
And now they're worth $750,000 to $1.5 million.
Yeah, and today's average commission is
probably any place from 12 to 13 to 18 to 19,000, depending on the city, the county, the state, etc.
That is a big difference.
Yes.
And that does take some of the motivation out of talking to people every day.
That's right.
At $250 average commission. And you've said this many, many times that, give 50% of your commission check to your broker and see how much more motivated you would be to keep earning money.
Oh, see, we never got paid more than 50% commission on, a broker would say, you sell a house for $27,000, 6% commission, half goes to the other cooperating broker, half comes to the company. I give you half, I keep half. And we were thrilled to death,
My, how times have changed.
Yes, times have changed.
So with the coaching evolution, because obviously when you started it was training, then in 1988 you started coaching.
Yes.
Well, now there has to be hundreds of coaching companies that are out there, if not thousands.
They're on every corner.
They truly are. And how have you seen the evolution of the coaching industry?
Well, it hasn't changed because it's either one-on-one coaching, and it can be what we would call one-on-one here at the company, or we call premier coaching, which is just a little higher level in terms of the benefits they receive. And, coaching is how do we help you achieve the goals you've set? So you have to be really good at asking questions. You have to be really good at having an understanding that not everybody wants what you want as a coach. You have to be really good at not pushing your agenda, looking to find the agenda that would be best for them. And then you have to sell them on it and remind them of it and keep helping them dig in and become part of that. And if they are open-minded and free-spirited, they will make so much money they can't spend it all.
For the 50th anniversary, which we celebrated really last year at our Superstar Retreat, we invited anyone who had been a coach with the company since the inception of coaching.
Yeah.
And it literally was about 400 people. Does that surprise you? And how did you feel about that?
I didn't know. I could care less.
Really?
Yeah. People say, how do you deal with the competition? Be better than they are. Outwork them.
Well, given the fact that most of them came from what you taught, I would assume that's a little bit easier anyways for you and for the Mike Ferry organization.
Well, yeah, I've always said, the competition always exists. Mm-hmm. You can spend your time trying to figure out how to beat them or try to figure out how to achieve the goals you've set.
Yeah, I would say one of the things I have learned from Mike, and it's not always the easiest thing, but if you spend a lot of time looking at your competition, you start doing what they do. When you stay focused and committed to the goals that you have set and being better every day, it doesn't matter what the competition does.
No, because there's always going to be competition. Now, the number of agents in real estate has quadrupled, in the 50 years I've been involved. So, you can't have everything. Where would you put it? As Stephen Wright, the comedian, would always say. But it's only natural that the competition is going to exist. It's what they say to the client that concerns me.
Tell me more about that.
Well, they're saying, you can hold a mega open house. Well, what is a mega open house?
A really big house.
A
No?
really big house. Yeah, I mean that. But and you can get 20, 30, 40 people to come through. Well, you can only talk to one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
There's
a lot of drama in the world today. There's a lot of
emotion
and hype, and everything is like. Yes, there's so much of that. How do you cut through that? Because you've never bought into that.
No, well, first of all, it takes a lot of energy to build and maintain and, keep a company growing. As you get older, your energy depletes and they go away, the competition in most cases. I mean, I can only think of maybe 2 or 3 people that are still competitive to what we are doing with the company. And these people are good at what they do, and they are successful. But, I mean, I've probably known 1,000 real estate coaches. Yeah. And most of them, I don't say this to brag, but most of them were clients of ours that thought it was pretty easy, so I'll just go do it myself.
Well, it's so interesting. You always used to say there was a group of people who left because they thought you were too strong, that your message was too direct. And I remember you saying to me once that if you dilute the message, you dilute the results.
Yes.
And the problem with what they were doing was trying to make it more more appetizing, more easier to do, just giving them.
They were trying to eliminate the word no from all conversations.
Actually, you know what? That's a great way of saying it, because you've never cared about the rejection and you've always said it's part of it. And so many people are afraid of that.
That's right.
So they're trying to make it more palatable. That was the word I was looking for, in being able to support someone in moving forward. And yet the bottom line is sometimes it's just hard work. And the best way to get there is by telling somebody the truth and helping them move forward, because I think that has always been your greatest strength.
I don't know.
You've never been attached to the outcome on that.
Excuse me. Well, attaching yourself to a couple or to a house or to a commission check is short-term business.
That's a really good point. And you become then the puppet instead of the person, the professional.
Well, you're not the one controlling the strings.
Right. So years ago, I know that you had 3 mentors, 3 coaches. What made you believe in that concept to begin with?
Well, I was very lucky, and I say this sincerely. I was working with a guy named Bill Mitchell, who had a wonderful career in the marketing and sales training area for new home sales. And Bill became a good friend of mine. And one day I'm sitting in his office, and he had said, I'll be back in a few minutes. And I look out the window, and a stretch Cadillac pulls up in front of the office. And I mean, I had never seen a stretch Cadillac before. And this guy jumps out, and you could just almost feel his energy from 200 feet away. He goes into his trunk, and he pulls out this little box. He looks up and down the street, looks right at our office, walks in, knocks on the door. I was the only person there for the few minutes. I introduced myself. His name was Giles Kavanaugh. Really one of the best salespeople I'd ever met in my life, and I still would say that about him today. I'm not even sure if he's alive because he was quite a bit older than I was. Hopefully he still is. And if he's not, I hope it was peaceful. Mm-hmm. So Giles presented to me a program called Lead the Field by Earl Nightingale, and how he did it, he took a cassette player, which you had to carry cassette players with you, and he put a recording in, and it was the recording on attitude, what he called the magic word. Mm. And I said, how do I get that set of things to listen to all the time? It was like $175.
Wow, that's a lot if your average commission was $250.
Yes, it was. And the worst part about it is it was a $175 fee, and it was a one payment only, so it wasn't, you couldn't finance it and so forth. So I wrote a check out of our personal account, and I gave it to him, and he gave me the set. And then I thought, now I got to go home and tell my wife I bought it. Little details, right?
Little details.
So I used his approach. I said, I want to introduce you to something that Claudia, you know her. I said,
yes.
I want you to listen to this. It's something that I really feel strongly about. She listened to it. She said, wow. So I started telling all my friends about this tape program and referring the people to Giles. And in the first month, I think he sold 30 of my friends a set of these tapes. So at the end of about 5 weeks, he comes in the office one day and he said, here, and he has an envelope, and he said, this is for you. And I said, what is it? He said, open it up. And I think it was like $3,500.
Wow.
In $100 bills. Well, you're 23, 24 years old. That gets your attention. And I said, what's this? This is part of the commissions I've earned on the people that I've sold that you referred me to. How would you like to make that every month? I said, how do I do it? He said, follow me. I walked right out of the office I was working in, never went back, and worked for Giles as a salesperson selling tapes every day.
Okay, and then you obviously met Earl Nightingale.
Well, this is what was funny is... Well, it wasn't funny to Earl, but it was, amusing to me. I'm sitting in Giles' office, and he's on the phone, and he said, here, Mike, this is Earl Nightingale. I want you to meet him. You've been selling his tapes all the time. Yeah, really. Earl Nightingale wants to talk to me.
Oh, good.
I said, hello. This is Earl Nightingale. I said, sure, and I hung up the phone. Giles almost had a heart attack, and he goes, that was Earl Nightingale. Phone rings again. Earl's on the phone with Giles. He hands me the phone, and I said, hi, who's this? He said, it's Earl Nightingale. I said, you can't trick me twice. Thank you. Bye. And I hung up again. Cocky, young, stupid.
Third time the charm?
Third time was the charm. I didn't hang up. Before I could hang up, he said, there's a first-class ticket to Chicago for you to come and meet me on Friday.
Wow.
I'm going, well, this guy is serious. So I went back and I became one of the top salespeople for Nightingale's company, and I did that for a couple of years. Then he put me on staff, and I mean, I was amazed at the amount of money that could be made selling people on themselves.
Wow, what an interesting statement. Selling people on themselves. Yeah. We can do so much more than we realize. And yet most of us need some help. We need some guidance. Yep. We need someone to encourage us, someone to show us the way. And it sounds like Earl did that.
Well, he was the world's most listened to person on the radio.
Wow.
40 million people a day listen to Earl Nightingale on the radio. And he somewhat adopted me because I was young and energetic. And that's how I got involved with Earl. But at one of Earl's big seminars that he was putting on, he had a guy there named Mike Vance speaking. And I'm sitting in the front row next to Earl Nightingale. Mike Vance is on the stage, and he's kind of staring at me most of the time. And finally, when he finished his talk, he pointed to me, and then he pointed backstage, which means he wanted me to come backstage. And he introduced himself to me, and he was unbelievable. I mean, I've never met a person since that had the energy of Mike Vance and the smile and the charisma. And he said, "Where do you live?" I said, "In Newport Beach, California." He said, "We're neighbors. So let's get together and talk next week." About a month into the relationship building, he introduced me to his best friend, which was Dr. Gunther Klaus, who was probably the premier management speaker at the time in the nation. He was getting $25,000 an hour in the 60s.
Wow.
For speaking. I mean, that's how good Gunther was. And both of them offered me an opportunity to join their company, and I went with Gunther because he was a business person, and I loved Mike Vance to death, and we maintained our relationship. When I told him, I said, "Gunther is a better business person than you and I will ever be." He said, "Go with Gunther." So I did. Then I started my own about a year later. Now, folks, we have in this room today, in our little conference room, whatever
Studio.
you want to studio, I have a clock on the wall, and it says 31 minutes and 9 seconds.
Wow. That has gone by fast.
That's right.
So maybe we'll do a part 2 to this interview, if you would be willing.
Of course.
Well, that's one way of getting Mike to do it, right? Put it on camera. So, you know what? This is just amazing to me what you have talked about with Earl, with Mike Vance. And I had the opportunity of meeting Mike Vance several times. And it was amazing how some people they think differently. They see things differently. And I wish I would have met Earl and Gunther. You luckily had the chance.
Yes.
And you had the opportunity of having 3 people make such a difference in your life. And I know that there are so many people out there who believe that you have made such a difference in their life. And I can see now where your passion, where your commitment to what you believe in and talking to people and being strong in what you believe and how important that is. If there was one piece of advice you could give a real estate professional right now as we end this, what would that one thing be?
Find a person that has done what you're trying to do and study them, make them part of your life. Earl, I studied his every word. I introduced him probably 50 times to speak, he was speaking to a big audience. Mike Vance, he had a great thought. He said, think outside the box. Mm-hmm. And then Gunther, of course, with the 180-degree theory, which is find out what the competition's doing and do exactly the opposite. So I would say to anybody listening today, you can enjoy production at the level you're at, but it's much more enjoyable when you double and triple it. And anybody can do that if they will just follow the leader, whoever that leader may be. And you pointed to me, which was very complimentary. There's a lot of great speakers. Anybody that says they're not the best, discount them.
Well, and it is funny because the one thing I will say in this, and you have never been the one to really brag about yourself in that way, but I will say to you, there are so many coaches out there who you really need to know what their history is, what they bring to the table. And, yes, some of them are strong and they're charismatic, and that's one thing, but is that going to help you achieve the goals that you have set? Be choosy when you look for someone to follow and make sure that they have done it, that they have integrity, and that they have the passion and commitment for what they do. So thank you for taking the time today, and I can't wait to do part 2 of this. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.